Right guys, welcome back. So, I have taken the time to cut all these parts out for each different step, get them cleaned up and get them ready to glue together. So we've got the steering wheel shaft, dash panel, we've got a fuse box, I think, because that's a buzzer row there, fuse buzzer row there. We've got a park brake, possibly a gear drive selector. We've got the throttle, got a fire extinguisher. We've got a piece here which looks to be part of the air conditioning system. This is another part of the fuse system. We've got a pedal assembly, so possibly brake assembly, not sure. And this part of the bulkhead, and then we've got seating. So we've got the two front driver and co-driver seats and seat bases, and then we've got the rear bench seat, and all that's got to go in there. So the best thing to do is just to get it stuck together. We'll start with the bench seat because it's quite big. The locating pins on it or locating lugs as they are quite good. Certainly positive and helps with the overall lining, although this part here is a little bit warped. But that's easy enough worked out. Best thing to do is go to one end that's a good positive fit and glue that one end. No, don't want to just dump loads of glue on it. I've picked up the wrong glue pot. This is my Revell contactor glue. I decanted into a Tamiya pot. That's the one I'm wanting. There we go, that's better. Right. So glue and push. And you can see there along the front of the seat it bows in a bit where it's been slightly warped. So in order to get that to level out, what we can do is just move the center into position, and we'll glue just the center. Push it in place and hold. Realistically, you're probably not going to see if it's slightly warped, but if you want to build it, just build it right. So we'll get the peg just to hold that and check that it's looking down it to see that it's straight, and then you can see the end is slightly kicked out. And then what we can do is just bring that into alignment and glue it in place, and we'll peg this as well. There we go. Again, we'll get another peg. We'll just hold that into place. Now if you wanted to get a real quick bond on this, super glue would do that for you. But a peg and 20 minutes it'll be set solid, and there'll be no problem with it whatsoever. Right, the back, so we've got the seat cushion with the two locating lugs. We've got the back, seat back, that fits very nicely. Beware that this can go either way, but one side's got ejector pin marks on, so you want to make sure those are to the inside. And then we've got this frame that will go either way, but again, one side you've got bolt heads, and the other side, don't flick it away, you've got the extended locating pins to go in the seat back. and that goes like so. So basically we just need to glue the back in and then glue the frame in. And then this piece just goes and that fits perfectly, really, really nicely. You won't need much glue to hold this in. You can just run a glue bead down the outside of the frame. And then if you really want, you could just touch it in under these two parts there, and that's that. So there's the back and there's the base. Right. The next thing we need to do is the base unit for the seat. Now this part isn't particularly nice, to be honest with you. I need to get a file because it's not marrying up very well, and it's got ejector pins everywhere. Well, not ejector pins, but it's got slide molding marks on it. So we just need to come in with a file and clean that. That's for all four pieces, so we've got H12. There we go. So that's cleaned that up. And then we need to just slot those together. Now they're just mirror parts. But if you can see, they're not 100% lined up. So what we do need to do is just come in and file down either side of the locating pin, just to give you a little bit of flexibility to move into the line, and that should give us the ability to line it up, which it does. So next thing to do is, if you set that on a hard surface, keeps it level, and we can run glue down the top, give it a push together, that will hold it together, then turn it over and you can see the two legs here. We can glue that and we can glue that, and we just need to make sure it lines up, holding it on the flat, pushing it together. Now, looking at reference photographs, although they're calling out the seat colour as khaki, the actual bases are satin black, or you could do gloss black with a bit of satin varnish. The base, this part of the base is black. In fact, all of this, so you've got the base and then you've got the adjuster and the adjuster lever. But the end of the lever is actually yellow. It's got a decal on it. In the real thing, there's some really good reference photos of the interior of this cab online, so you can see just what color goes where. So same again here. So just push them together, touch and float, and push. And again, push. So when these things are dry, if we need to, we can adjust them to get them square and level, and if needed to, we can just sand any burring or plastic extrusion flat. It is important to get these parts as accurate as you can, purely because it's what your seat base is going to be on. Right, there are two parts, well, 3 parts of the seat base is these 2 parts here. So they just come together onto K2. So it's J27 and J28, and they go down on K2. Pay attention to K2. There is 2 bolt details on the side. There's a little bit of flash there, which easily scrapes away. Well, flash or bearing, whatever you want to call it. You can use a scalpel blade to clean it. Sometimes that's easier. And you look at how they're moulding these parts, there's no wonder there's a bit of bearing. It's not the end of the world, and it's definitely not a deal breaker. Right, so if you look at K2 on the instructions, then you've got 2 holes either side, and they're set to bias to one end of the part, and those holes need to be further to the rear. The gap here is for the front. And when you look at the legs, when you pop them in, so you keep the gap to the front, the angle on the legs takes the seat pretty much level to the base. They slot in beautifully. And for a fellow with big hands like me, I can just about manage it. Come in like that, touch and flow down the front, gentle push, line them up, and then you can touch and flow on the bottom, and that will hold them in perfectly. And then these parts here, they glue straight to the seat base. It starts to build a very stout structure. Now obviously that's how the seat sides back and forth for driver comfort, but instructions are basically saying that this is all level with one another. And of course it doesn't want to sit on it. So touch and flow, both sides, positioning it whilst the glue is still soft and tacky, get it fitted down perfectly. Yeah, these parts are they're a little ropey, I'll be honest with you, they are a little ropey. But realistically you're probably not going to see much of them when it's in the kit. And we could, if we wanted to, just glue them straight into the truck. However, that will make painting them a lot more difficult. So we're going to leave them off the truck. And we're just going to leave them cure up. You can always just get a file and just push it flat. Right. The last piece to go on the seat base is this adjusting lever, and that just goes straight in the front. So that's the seat coming together. Check in line as we go, and then we've got 4 parts to the seat. In fact, 5 parts of the seat. So we've got seat back, which just goes together. Again, be careful, there are ejector pin marks on the back, and they can just go to the inside and no one will see them. It's a really good fit. So touch and flow. And then the base is, you've got the base, seat base here, seat squab. It's rectangular, so there's no direction front or back. As with the base, again there are ejector pin marks, they can just go to the inside. You won't see them. If you can get it in. Sometimes butterfingers. Right, touch and float. And then we've got the base, so that hole there fits onto the base frame, and it's a really nice positive fit, no problems. There we go. And then that part then fits into the back, seat back, which is a good fit. Now, in all realism, we probably need to let these parts cure up a little before we put them together fully. However, I'm awful impatient. So right, let's see if we can get that in. Yeah, a little bit tricky fit. It might be needing to be fettled. But the thing with this is not to take too much off, otherwise you'll end up struggling to get a decent bond. Like I said, super glue might be an ideal choice of glue here just for its quick drying properties. But that seems to go together reasonably well. And then this just fits rather nicely on here. I'm just trying to see how it goes together. There isn't actually a picture of the back of the seat, which is a shame, because that would help certainly to figure out how it goes together. But we can glue this all together because there is enough. If we leave it off the model, then there's enough areas to get paint in all the areas. Yeah, so that fits in nicely there. So we can just come and get that glued in. So touch and flow again. Now, and then it touches here on the seat. And then we can glue it at the front and then make sure that the seat itself is square in the middle. And that's the seat together. So if I hold it with the tweezers, my fan's out of the way, that's actually a really, really nice seat. It's very well detailed and it's going to paint up brilliant. So basically we'll be spraying it back black and then we'll brush paint the back and the bottom a khaki colour. And there's enough detail on this that we can do a bit of dry brushing to bring out the detail. And it's certainly going to be strong enough to withstand any handling that needs to be done to get it painted. I honestly think the worst bit of this seat is the base piece here. It could have been moulded differently, but it is what Hobby Boss has given us. So we may need to do a little bit of filling in here with some super glue and a little bit of filing, but we can try it. In here. So this is the driver's side, so it fits really nicely. And it looks pretty good. And looking at this, it's not actually much of it's going to be seen, but we do need to make sure that it's square in the cab. Now, let's just pop the back seat in because this should be drying out. So that piece goes in there, like so. That's another good fit. So that should fit in the locating parts. You can see there is a tab hole there for the seat to fit into. This definitely does need to be painted before it's fixed in, because you're really going to struggle to paint some of this if you don't. But that fits quite nicely in there. Yep, that's not bad at all. And then the back seat back will go in like so. Yeah. And that's not bad, although if you look at the window and the seat back, there's a distinct angle on it where it's higher up on this end than this end, so there's a bit of work needing to be done there yet. But we can glue the two together because we'll be able to paint this together no problem at all. Now I think the bottom of this is the interior green paint. This part will be interior green and this will be khaki as well. Yeah, there's definitely a bit of a warp on that. I don't know why. However, we can persevere. It's a very firm fit. Now we'll try it back in. There we go. That's better. Yeah, so that's a lovely fit. There we go, so that's starting to come together. Right, so I'll build the other seat off the camera because it'll either be boring. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to work with the pedal. So that just sits in the groove just nicely. Although I need to use tweezers because my fingers are far too big for this game. So that sits in there nicely. And then that goes in the front there. And as I'm building this, I'm constantly thinking, can I paint this? Because if I can't paint it, I don't want to fit it. I only want to fit it if I know I'm going to be able to paint it. And I can get either a paintbrush or get the airbrush to it. But I do want to try and get as much of this together as I can, just to ease construction. Or should not ease construction, but basically keep construction at a pace. Otherwise you get bogged down in kits like this. You need to get on with them. These parts are fitting really nicely. Just a simple cleanup. So that's that together. And then the next thing that goes on is this pedal here. And the fire extinguisher sits in the corner. Now the fire extinguisher I'm maybe going to leave off because it's quite tight in there. So we can set that to one side and we'll paint that separately. Right, the lever time. So this is the gear selector lever. Yeah, the instructions aren't that great on this as to which way around this goes. I'm assuming it goes with a slight cant towards the driver rather as a way to the passenger. And then the park brake fits in here. And these should be quite easily accessible with a paintbrush to do the detail painting. And then this fuse box assembly just slots in there nicely. And then the last thing to go in is the steering wheel. And that part clips into the universal joint there. So you can see you don't need to glue that. We have the dash that sits right across here and closes it all in. It's an interesting fit there. Now I'm not going to glue the dash in, and that's simply because what I want to do is glue the steering wheel in to the dash, but leave it all detachable so we can pull the dash out to paint it and then put it back in once it's painted, because I think that will be a little bit easier. So if we feed the steering wheel into its locating hole, which then will help align where the steering wheel bracket glues to the dash. That fits quite nicely there. And then that the steering wheel just glues to the front of the dash, and that's going to be an absolute pain in the hoop, I think, to paint. So I'm going to do a little bit of research, I think, on that to see exactly where and how it goes. But at the moment, yeah, looking a bit difficult. Possibly needs to go in like so. Yeah, no, that's not too bad. We've got to get decals on the dash, so that's important, but also I don't want to be working with glue once the dash is painted. So I am keen to get the steering wheel on it as a subsection of construction. That goes in. Yeah, that's there. That's how that goes. So the main thing to do is make sure that the steering wheel is straight up and down, and that the steering wheel lines up with the driver's seat. So we need to move that over slightly. And I would think the steering wheel center boss needs to be in line with the speedometer here. So it's a bit tricky. It's not impossible. And again, it might be easier for some modelers to use a drop of super glue to get it tack welded in place and then back it up with some extra thin. But that is it in. Yeah, I say a bit fiddly. We've got it done. I'm happy with the placement. If we get the driver's seat, pop the driver's seat in. Try not to trash the steering wheel whilst I'm doing it. That's locked home. There we go. So there's the seat, the steering wheel, the gear selector, park brake. That's all in and it all fits nicely. And the other thing to check, that steering wheel needs to go a bit flatter. It's a bit more vertical. what we can do as well, now that we're happy with the positioning of this part, so we can put a little drop of glue here on the universal joint just to lock that up, which will help locate it all. When we take it apart, it'll keep it in the right orientation. And the other thing to do is get the windscreen and just check fit the windscreen to see that it still fits, which it does. So that's really quite nice. So I'm going to, I've got this last piece to put in here, which goes right in the corner. And then I'm going to make up the passenger seat, and then we'll come back and look to see what other bits we need to think about getting assembled into either the cab assembly or sub-assemblies before we start painting. So see you back shortly.